land has a memory. And I think a lot of times when we think about war, we think about it as a battle, as combatants on the battlefield. But in fact, the places where these battles take place, that war becomes embedded in the landscape. Those memories of war can last for generations. One of the areas that I'm most interested in is to look at the legacies, the environmental legacies of conflict, and in this case, the Vietnam War. Environmental historians, generally we study the relationships between human history and the environment, ways that those environments have changed. Also the entanglements, the ways that our societies are in many ways constrained by damage to the environment. And a lot of that damage happened in the last 100 years. I started this research many years ago. I've been traveling back and forth to Vietnam since 1993. I was an English teacher working in Saigon. And I remember from the early days traveling along on the highways, old painted over South Vietnamese flags or giant empty spaces. So there were these large scars in a sense left in the landscape. I just became interested in the environmental legacy and how people in Vietnam are dealing with that. Different specialists who are doing research or engineers doing environmental cleanups, they rely on historians to give them a picture of what the place looked like, where materials might have been, how much, why they were being used. This is an opening for historians in particular to try to characterize those places. What I try to do is to show that the chemical history in Vietnam was much, much more broad. This was an era in the 1960s where chemicals were being opened up and experimented with. We're dropping barrels of napalm to try to push people out of these underground bunkers. That was an important chemical, as well as tear gas. Tear gas was used extensively throughout the war. This is the workhorse of the American war. This is the UH-1B or Huey. And this one in particular was a gunship, but these helicopters did all kinds of aerial missions. They were spraying missions, spraying Agent Orange. They were used for medevac to bring wounded soldiers out of combat areas. A lot of the landscape was torn up from the war. More bombs were dropped in Vietnam than all of Europe in World War II, about 5 times over. What I soon discovered, however, is that really one of the most impressive features in Vietnam are the people and the culture, the life on the sidewalks. In Vietnam, one of the things that's really amazing is that if you take an interest in the culture, in the history, and you're willing to listen to people, I've never met more hospitable people. I love taking students to Vietnam. I love to see students transformed. For many of these students, it changes their trajectory in a sense about how they view college, what they think about in their career. It's a really immersive educational experience. UC Riverside and the UC system in general has been a fantastic base for doing this project. And UCR is incredibly supportive with allowing to arrange schedule for teaching, for service. A lot of the research that I would have had to travel thousands of miles to do 10 years ago, I'm now able to do working in Riverside. I think my work is unique just in that I take an environmental approach to history in Vietnam. Very few people look at the environment in this area. How does the world's largest military, with all of these incredible machines and technology, fight people that are fighting from their past that is linked to these invisible landscapes around them? Maybe there are nonviolent approaches that might actually achieve more. The stories that I tell, I hope, will complicate a sense of what is Vietnam. It shows them a different view on Vietnam, a country with a much deeper history than just the American War.